When your heart beats for the great outdoors, see your Chevy dealer, where you'll find over 90 different ways to enjoy it all.
On the heartbeat of America, Chevrolet. That's today's Chevy truck.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Workshop, brought to you by the Heartbeat of America, today's Chevy truck.
For a pan-fishing film, we came to beautiful Table Rock Reservoir in the Missouri Ozarks, located right on the border of the state of Missouri and Arkansas. Excellent, beautiful, clear water full of panfish, bluegill, crappie, and white bass. Today we're on one of our beautiful Ozark reservoirs trying to catch some panfish. And as you can tell, we've got a little changing weather conditions, but panfish is probably one of the most fun, easiest way of catching fish that are good to eat that there is. Oh, look at here. Panfish are found in virtually every state in the United States, sometimes not too big, but we have a lot of fish in our Ozarks reservoirs, of which panfish are just one. Bluegill and crappie. Today, we're fishing with little worms for the bluegill and minnows for the crappie, and we'll show you some of those baits after a while. I'm with some friends of mine. This is Sandy, this is Julie, this is Jared, and behind Jared is Tracy. We're going to see if we can catch some panfish for you today, and we're going to try and give you a few tips on how you can go out and catch some panfish where you live. We're going to head out now, and we're going to look for a place to catch some of these panfish. Basically, we'll be looking for standing timber in rather deep water because the water is warm in the late summer and the fish are down a little bit deeper. So we'll be fishing probably 25 to 30 feet deep along the edges of the creek channels in the standing timber, and that's where we should be able to locate the panfish today. Regardless of whether you're a pre-teenager, a teenager, or an adult, you should always wear a life jacket in a boat, especially when the big engine is running. When you're fishing, sitting still, tied up, anchored, it's all right to take your life jacket off as long as you keep it nearby. And just have it close in case you need it. But when that big engine is running, make sure that life jacket is on and zipped up. Although we're going to be fishing pretty deep today, these fish are not always found in deep water. As a matter of fact, the majority of the year they're found in rather shallow water along the bank lines, which makes them so easy to catch from the bank as well as in a boat. But we're fishing in the late summer, and as you can tell, we've got some stormy weather in the area, so this has put the fish into the deeper water. Fish will always relate or try to find water temperature that is the closest to the temperature that they prefer. Different species of fish prefer different temperatures of water. In the wintertime, crappie and bluegill will have to go deep because that's where the warmest water is, in a reservoir. In the spring, they come to the shallow water for two reasons: to feed and to spawn. After the spawn, they will again move primarily based on the temperature of the water. If the water stays cool, they will stay shallow. When the water temperature gets over 75 or 80 degrees, bluegill and panfish will go to deeper water to find that cool temperature zone that they prefer. In other words, the surface temperature here has been approximately 84 degrees, and at about 18 feet deep, the water temperature is about 82 degrees. But at 22 feet deep, the water temperature will be in the mid-70s. So that strata right there is where those fish are going to hold. Fishing in the standing timber is always an excellent place to catch panfish. A couple of things you need to remember though. You're fishing trees that have limbs that branch out. You'll be most successful fishing vertically. Don't cast out and let the lure sink down into the tree limbs or you'll get hung up. If you let the lure straight down over the side of the boat and right down through the tree limbs, most of the time you can retrieve the fish and the lure both right back up through the tree without getting hung. But if you cast out over that limb and your lure sinks down on top of it or on the other side of it, most of the time you're going to get hung up and you're going to break that lure off. We've been fishing where sun hasn't been much of a factor, but it is, as a general rule, very important to the location of fish. Fish do not have the ability to contract their eyeball, and they cannot stand a lot of bright sunlight. They will almost always try to attach themselves or be up next to some source of cover that will break up the bright sunlight so it doesn't affect their eyes. A 10-pound fish can hide behind a 2-inch stick. As long as his eyeball is concealed, he thinks that he's hidden. So you don't have to have a lot of cover, but you have to have a little bit. Panfish, as a general rule, will not be found in open water. Only on isolated occasions will you catch crappie or bluegill or white bass where they are not on some kind of cover. Bass, on the other hand, are almost always found on hard cover. There's a real distinction there, a real difference between those two types of fish. So always look for some kind of cover that will hold these fish. Panfish will try to school up. They are not an individual fish. They are a school-oriented fish. Where you catch one, you can usually catch 10 or 15 without having to move the boat. So try to fish around something that'll hold fish, some kind of cover, and you'll find that your success will be greatly enhanced. You know, cleaning panfish need not be a chore if you've got some aids to help you. And the best thing you can have is an electric fillet knife. When you use an electric fillet knife, you'll lose a little bit of meat, but the convenience makes it well worth the while as long as the fish are big enough to fillet. The bluegill would have to be about 1/2 to 3/4 of a pound minimum, and a crappie approximately the same size. I've got a bluegill here, and we're going to fillet them out for you. You'll notice you take the knife, set it right along the back of the fin and behind the gill. And then when you start the knife, just a little bit of pressure down and turn this way and go along parallel to the spine. Then you turn the fillet over. Sometimes you won't get the skin cut off. There you have a nice little fillet. Turn the fish over and do the same thing on the other side. Another way to prepare a panfish, if they're a little bit smaller than what you can safely fillet, is to take a regular knife and put the blade the same place as you had it with the fillet knife, behind the gill, behind the fin, and behind this ventral fin here, and cut down through the fish, completely severing. And then take a spoon, a plain kitchen spoon, put your thumb inside of here, and just start up against the grain, and you'll see you can scale this fish in practically no time. After you have the fish scaled, you can get rid of the rest of the fish. After you have him completely scaled, you can see how easy it is. Make sure the fish is wet when you do this. Don't let the scales dry out or it's hard to get them off. Now that fish is really ready for the skillet. All you need to do in order to prepare this fish now is wash him off and bread him or whatever kind of batter you prefer to cook them in. Don't bother to remove these fins. You can cook the fish with the fins on them, and then the fins will remove very easily after the fish is already cooked. So there you have a bluegill ready for the skillet. Once you have the fish cleaned and prepared for the table, the next logical step is to cook them. Nothing tastes any better than fresh fish cooked at a shore lunch. A good hot skillet full of grease and a bunch of fresh fish fillets is about as good eating as it comes. To prepare the fish, it just takes a little bit of equipment, a Ziploc plastic bag, a little bit of cornmeal, some salt and pepper mixed all together in the bag. Wash the fillets, dry them off a little bit, drop them all in that bag of cornmeal and shake them up good. When you take them out, take a couple of drops of water and drop them in the skillet. If the water pops, the grease is hot enough to drop those fillets in. And you don't have to cook them very long. A fillet that's only about 1/4 of an inch thick will only take about maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute on each side. As soon as that cornmeal starts to turn a little brown, they're ready to put on the plate and have a fine meal. When you go fishing for panfish, you got to remember a couple of things. First, these fish have rather small, tender mouths, so you want to use small lures. Basically 1/16 of an ounce, 1/8 of an ounce, something in that range, fairly light line, but you can use a selection of different baits, both artificial and real. You can see here we have some little lead head jigs, some little curly tail soft plastic lures, both with and without spinners, depending on whether you're fishing in clear water or murky water. And we have some live baits, a regular earthworm, a little minnow, probably the best crappie bait there is, a minnow, and for your brim or your bluegill, a cricket, just a live cricket. These are all excellent baits for fishing for any panfish that you might want to catch, and they're available all over the country, and it's not expensive. It's not an expensive man's sport.
Roger, I broke my line.
Well, let me see here. Okay, set your pole down here. I'll show you how to tie a knot that won't break, okay? You hold on to that. Now we're going to pretend that that's your fish hook, and this is your fishing line. Okay, you go through the eye of a fishing hook, and you come right back and go through it again. Then you pull your line up tight till you've got a little loop like that. See that little loop right there?
Yeah.
Then you take this end of the line and wrap it around 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you go right back through those 2 loops. See there?
Yeah.
Then you get a hold of this end of the line and you pull on this end of the line. This is a little bit bulky because this is real heavy. And this will slide down and make a real tight knot. And hold on with me. I'm going to pull it down now so you can see. Pull down to a real tight knot and it won't break. See, that's a good fishing knot now. It won't break on you. Okay? See how that works? That knot won't pull loose. And remember, when you're fishing, the weakest thing between you and the fish is your fishing line. So you got to have a good knot in your line. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
We've got a few lures here that we're going to show you as we retrieve them underwater. You'll notice that they work around some of the stumps and over the logs and around the brush piles and so forth, but basically pretty close to the bottom. The most effective action to attract any fish to bite an artificial lure is a vertical action, up and down, up and down. The spinner blades, the action side to side and up and down are all designed to attract that fish to make your fishing more successful. The least successful cast you can make is one where you cast the lure out and wind it straight back. Varying your retrieve will increase your success dramatically. An excellent technique for crappie fishing is what we call crocheting. Crocheting merely is taking a small 16th or 32nd ounce or even a 64th ounce lead head marabou jig and dropping it down through the brush piles, down through the cover to the bottom. When it hits the bottom, then you take a hold of your line with your thumb and your index finger and you twitch it. You pick it up again with your thumb and finger, drop that coil, twitch it again. Every time you go from the pickup, the twitch, to the pickup, you retrieve about 8 inches of line. And in effect, what you're doing is working that jig like it's a small minnow right back up through that brush pile. You won't get hung up. You'll be able to feel the strike because you're holding on to the line and the jig moves exactly vertically through the tree as it comes back up. Very seldom will you hang up. And you'll catch a lot of fish because you can see that jig just twitch up and down. It just looks like an injured minnow laying in the limbs of the tree. As you retrieve this jig from the bottom, if you can count 1, 2, 3, if you should get a strike here, you know that you're approximately 24 inches off the bottom. Now all you have to do is drop the jig to the bottom, quickly retrieve 24 inches of line, wind that line up on your reel, and you don't have to guess the depth anymore. You have found the level that those fish are stratified. So now if you're fishing 12 feet deep and you know the fish are 2 feet off the bottom, all you do every time is drop your line to 10 feet deep and you should only have to go twitch, twitch, and catch another fish. Once you have located the depth of the fish, especially with panfish, they will stratify horizontally. Once you've found that depth, regardless of what time of the year it is, you can be a lot more successful because you eliminate all of the rest of the lake. Only fish 10 feet deep, if that's the depth at which you've been able to find the fish. And this twitching technique not only helps you locate the depth of the fish, but it enables you to fish an extremely heavy brush without using a weedless lure. Vertical presentation, just like we told you, straight up and down, is the most successful method of attracting fish. Something else that's really important when you're pan fishing, your choice of fishing tackle. I've seen people pan fishing and being very successful with cane poles. You don't have to have an expensive $100 graphite rod and a very expensive spinning reel. Little closed-face push-button reels are excellent. The best choice you can make, especially when you're teaching a youngster to fish. You want something that's relatively trouble-free, doesn't have a tendency to backlash, and something that when they get a fish on, they feel comfortable with. Don't put a big, cumbersome 6 or 6.5 foot rod with 12-pound line in a youngster's hand and ask him to go out and fish for bluegill. It just cannot successfully be done. Get something with 4 to 6-pound line and a rod in the 5 to 5.5 foot category, no longer. If you have a basic selection of lures, then you really don't have to have the big tackle box and the expensive selection that you would have if you were fishing for, say, bass or even rainbow trout. Something else to remember when you're pan fishing. Absolutely, you can be as successful from the shoreline as you can from a boat. A $15,000 or $20,000 bass boat is no advantage to someone who wants to catch a bunch of panfish and have a good fish fry. You can fish out of a little canoe, a one-man boat. I've seen a lot of people fishing out of inner tubes for panfish. So there's just a tremendous amount of variety that you can put into a panfishing trip. Can you take him up and put him in the live well up there? Huh? Yeah, well, here you go. Yeah. Put your hand right here in his mouth. Get a hold of him right there, okay? Just bite, he won't bite you. He doesn't have any teeth. Hold him tight.
I can't.
Can't pick him up? It's okay, try it again. There you go. Take a hold of him.
Open the thing up.
Uh-oh. Got a fish out there, huh? What is it? That's a crappie. That's a good crappie.
It's a good crappie.
Yeah, bring him over here. You know what he did? You set your pole down and he caught that fish on your pole. Huh?
Did I still catch
Wait,
it?
lift him up here. That's a good crappie. Lift him on up.
Did I still catch it because it was on my pole?
Look at that, huh? That's a good crappie there.
I caught it.
Yeah.
Because that's my pole.
Jarrett caught him on your pole. Jarrett will give you that fish if you put your thumb in that fish's mouth. Huh? Come on. All right, you kids just stay here now and keep casting and try to catch some more fish. And while you're doing this, I'm going to go up and see how your mom's doing with lunch. And I'll come back down and get you when it's ready and we'll all go up and eat. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
How's the lunch going?
It's pretty good. I think it needs about 10 more minutes. Why don't you run down and get the kids, get them cleaned up, and then it'll be ready, time to eat.
We'll be right back.
Okay. Come here, Julie, and I'll put some fish on your plate, okay? There you go.
Looks good.
Okay, go over there and sit by your sister.
When will we get to go fishing in the boat, Roger?
Just as soon as you kids finish eating your lunch and we get the campsite cleaned up, we'll go back out.
Good. Get your life jackets on. We've talked a lot about structure and how important it is to holding fish.
Bridge piers are an excellent source of structure and will hold all kinds of fish. So anytime you're fishing and the bad weather sets in, if you can get under a bridge and fish around the piers, you're liable to fill your stringer right there.
Prior to owning the Chevrolet, I had a Ford. Well, I switched to the Chevy because I like the looks better than the Ford. I found out that they had completely redid the truck. You need a four-wheel drive truck. You don't want to have to get out and lock your wheels in. If you want to go into four-wheel drive, you can just shift into it. This Chevrolet truck is the best vehicle I have ever owned.
Heartbeat of America, that's today's Chevy truck.
If you don't believe it, just go out and try it yourself.
Roger, what are you doing in your shorts?
Well, look at the bright sun. You know, it was cloudy yesterday, all bright and sunny today, and I put my shorts on. I'm going to get a suntan. You kids wore your same Levi's, didn't you? You thought it was going to be cold and cloudy again today. You know, this is going to make the fishing different, too. The fish will bite a little better today, probably, because it was real cloudy yesterday, and bluegill and crappie, it doesn't make a lot of difference whether it's sunny or cloudy, but we might find some bigger fish today than we caught yesterday. What do you think? You want to try and catch some?
Yeah.
Well, let's go get them. I think probably the most important thing to take into consideration, especially when you're teaching a youngster to fish, is that they catch fish. Sometimes they don't have a real long attention span, and if fishing isn't real good, if there isn't a lot of activity, they tend to lose interest pretty quickly. That's what makes pan fishing such an easy introduction to fishing for most people. There's always a lot of action, and there's good eating. Gee, it's just something that the entire family can take part in. You can catch them on fly rods, spinning, whatever you want to use for tackle, but you've always got something pulling on the other end of your line, and that's the most important thing when you start fishing. This little bluegill is a male. You can tell the difference between a male and a female because a male will always be darker. A female will be a real light color, and a lot of times a male will be real orange in through here. Not always. It depends on the color of water they come out of. But this one's a little bit dark, and you know, that's a pretty good bluegill. That bluegill weighs about ½ a pound. We've got quite a few of those. What do you say we start releasing some of these, and we get enough for a couple of meals when we get home the way it is? How's that sound? Okay. I'll just take him back there and drop him back in the lake, and we'll let him swim away and catch him another day.
Drop him. That's deep water.
Boy, gone in a hurry, wasn't he?
Yep.
All right, let's go catch some more. Okay, bring him on up. Whoops, wind him hard. Wind him on up. Okay, bring him over here and we'll take him off the hook. Okay, that's a good fish. That's about the same size as the others. You want to throw him back? Yeah. Okay, get a hold of him, get your thumb in his mouth there. He won't bite you. Okay, you got him? If you fish a reservoir or a stream or a farm pond that has no cover in it, you're going to have a hard time locating the bluegill or the crappie. You can help your own fishing by taking a Christmas tree or a brush pile off of the bank and placing it in the water, and that will hold the bait fish, and the bait fish will attract the panfish. So you can increase your own fishing success by putting structure in the lake that you happen to fish if it doesn't have any in it already. Hand him over here to me now. Lift him on over here. That's far enough. Don't wind anymore. You want to put him back? He's about the same size as the one your sister just threw back. Just take him there and now just drop him back in the lake. Atta girl. In addition to fishing the creek channels and the steep bank lines in the hot part of the summer, boat docks are a tremendous source of structure and will hold a lot of panfish, especially bluegill. Can you put your finger in his mouth and throw him back? Because he's going to jump. Okay. As you go on a strange lake and you start fishing boat docks, there you go. The ones that have diving boards on them probably are not as good for fishing as the ones that have fishing rod holders. Another thing to look for, anytime you're in a reservoir or a lake and you see a boat dock that has a light on it, whether it's a arc light or a neon light or a plain light bulb, if these light bulbs stay on overnight, they attract insects. The insects attract the minnows, and the minnows attract the big fish. So those are just a couple of tips to look for when you're fishing boat docks. Floating docks are not generally as successful at holding fish as are docks that are permanently fastened to the bottom. If you have a post running to the bottom, it's just another vertical source of structure, much like a standing tree. So these are a couple of things that you can look for when you're fishing boat docks that you're not familiar with. Something else to look for in boat dock is this. The people who own the dock, if they are fishermen, have placed structure around their dock. They probably put their Christmas trees in at the end of the year. They don't put these trees right next to the dock. They put them, as a general rule, about 10 to 15 feet out from the end of the dock. Be sure to make 2 or 3 casts to the outside part of the dock. That's where you're going to have your most success. Sure he does. You gave him time to digest it. Whoops! Look at that.
Wind him up, wind him up, wind him up. Wind him on up. Oh, look at that. That's far enough. All right, now you're going to have to climb up the pole to get him off the hook because you wound him clear up to the end. That's far enough. Don't wind any more. Now lift the fish over here. Okay, so you want to be able to get a hold of the fish. If you wind him to the end of the pole, you got to put the pole down and put steps on it and climb up there to get him off the hook. Can you remember that? Okay, now you want to release this one? Want to throw him back?
I'll throw him back.
Okay, here, get a hold of the mouth because he's got fins. Okay, just drop him back in. There you go.
Oops, looks like he swallowed my worm.
We've had a successful weekend here fishing on Table Rock Lake. We haven't had the very best of weather, but we've really had good fishing. The kids have caught a lot of crappie and bluegill and a couple of white bass, and we've had enough fish to be able to have a fish fry, and I guess that's what it's all about. We hope you've enjoyed this tape as much as we've enjoyed doing it for you. This is your host, Roger Moore, inviting you back again for another exciting and informative edition of the Sportsman's Workshop.